you feel it,
My friends, Twisters is a brand new film from Lee Isaac Chung starring Glen Powell, Anthony Ramos, and Daisy Edgar-Jones. And it's also the long-awaited sequel to the 1996 classic Twister. And what you're probably wondering is, after 30 years, was a sequel really necessary? And if so, how does it stand side by side to the original? That's what I'm going to be talking about today. This is my spoiler-free review of Twisters. So welcome to my channel, everyone. Before we get going, make sure you smash like and subscribe if you're new here. If you subscribe, I promise this channel will blow you away. But Twisters. Haunted by a devastating encounter with a tornado, Kate Cooper gets lured back to the open plains by her friend Javi to test a groundbreaking new tracking system. She soon crosses paths with Tyler Owens, a charming but reckless social media superstar who thrives on posting his storm-chasing adventures. As storm season intensifies, Kate, Tyler, and their competing teams find themselves in a fight for their lives as multiple systems converge over central Oklahoma. And my friends, my initial thoughts when walking out of the theater, like the first thing that I thought to myself was, I can't believe that this movie was that good. It has everything that you could ever want in a blockbuster, and it also honors the original in so many ways. And honestly, just before I really dive into this movie, let's talk about the original Twister really quick. As I'm sure you're familiar, Twister is one of those classics that, especially if you live in the United States, you've probably seen. It's similar to Shawshank Redemption in the sense that it's just always on TV for some reason. But Twister is no doubt one of my favorite blockbusters of all time. It came out during a time where the industry was sort of scrambling to figure out what worked and what didn't work, very similar to today. And it sort of just flew onto the scene, no pun intended. The late Bill Paxton just gives this everyman performance that's so charming and cool, and then you have Helen Hunt just being this badass Joe, which eventually led me to marry a woman named Joe. It's funny how that works. Every single night she just has to deal with me being like, I'm right in front of you, Joe. But you also have Carrie Ellis and Philip Seymour Hoffman. The cast is stacked and every character is unique. For its time, it was a really big film. The tornadoes were just insane. Honestly, the special effects and the CGI and all of that stuff, it still holds up. And disaster movies tend to kind of do well just because there's like a deeper level to them. I think it's interesting to all of us just to see how something like this plays out, as terrifying as it is. So with all that being said, Twisters has this very rich legacy attached to it. And that's why I've been a little nervous about it. I'm not gonna lie, aside from Dune Part 2, this was my most anticipated film of the year. And I'm happy to say that it fully delivered for me. In a world where we rarely get movies like Independence Day or The Mummy or Twister, this film manages to bring back what is so precious about the cinematic experience. Everybody just wants to have a good time when they go to the movies. You don't want to think too much. You just want to sit there and watch something cool. You want to be entertained. And with this, you know, modern day special effects like the tornadoes and the storms feel huge, but I was surprised to see that this wasn't just a cash grab with big tornado set pieces. There is a very emotional and character-driven story being told here. Similar to the first one, but maybe even more so. And I think that's what people are looking for. You have these new up-and-coming stars, and you want them to have their moments rather than just being faces on a screen to fill space. And speaking of the characters and actors, I want to start with Daisy Edgar-Jones here. This is an actress that I was a little familiar with. I saw her in that show Under the Banner of Heaven. Really good show if you haven't seen it. She was also in Fresh, which is a fun little horror flick. And then she was in Where the Crawdads Sing, which I heard was good. I didn't see. But when I saw she was cast in this, I think it's easy to immediately compare her to Helen Hunt. And for me, like nostalgia-wise, that's big shoes to fill, man. But Daisy in this has the Bill Paxton role, the former storm enthusiast who's reluctant to come back, you know? But there's a lot of added depth given to her character. Specifically, like a lot of it happens in the first 15 minutes of this film. There's a weight that she's carrying, and when she needed to come through with some big swing emotional moments, she did. There's this one scene that happens in the middle of this movie where she has this really big like monologue, a large chunk of writing that she has to deliver, and she's in this barn, and everything just kind of slows down. I thought she nailed it. But moving on from her, now let's just get to the man who I think has owned 2024. Glen Powell, bruh. And you know, for me, Hitman already did this, but for others, I think this will be the performance where they look at him and go, Okay, yeah, he's a movie star. He's a dude that guys will envy, and women, well, let me just say, like, there was a woman sitting behind me in this theater, and there's a shot of him walking in the rain with a white t-shirt, and she audibly gasped. All I heard behind me was just like, oh. I was like, what the hell? And they play into that quite a bit, and they, as well they should. It's a big blockbuster. What I'm trying to say is that this guy is not just another thirst trap to sell tickets. He's an actual movie star. He's Will Smith. He's Brendan Fraser. He plays this character named Tyler Owens, and he's this YouTuber storm chaser who rides around with his crew and just is trying to make awesome content. And as a YouTuber, I was like, hell yeah. And the things he says are so cheesy, but somehow he makes it work. He's like, you don't chase your fears, you gotta ride them. And I'm like, yes, dude, let's go, man. But the way that this film uses Glenn to sort of lean on is perfect. It needed it. He has some awesome action moments, but he also has some nice emotional moments across from Daisy. These two together were great, and then you throw in Anthony Ramos as a sort of third lead here, and it just works. I'm a big Anthony Ramos fan, to be honest. Transformers: Rise of the Beast is a good movie, and I'm not ashamed to say that, so. But the way that they take elements from the first movie and sort of twist it all around is what's fun about this. It keeps you guessing. You have Anthony Ramos and his team, then you have Glen Powell and his team, and something that I touched on in the beginning is just how unique the first film is because of the camaraderie of the crew, and that's something that they heavily emphasized in this movie. You could tell that they paid a lot of attention to that. They paid a ton of attention in the casting process, and they got all of these unique personalities to come together and just fill this thing out, like from top to bottom. You got Sasha Lane and Katie O'Brien in there just killing it, and you also have this random British reporter, Ben, who's just along for the ride, and he adds so much humor. But two of them specifically I wanted to highlight. The first being Superman, David Cornswet. And honestly, had it not been for Pearl, this would have been my introduction to him as an actor. But I mean, he has so much dialogue in this film. It basically was. As soon as he popped up, I was like, oh yeah, Superman's in this. That's awesome. And he is so damn good. Even though he plays a character in this that is so opposite of Superman, I mean, this guy can act. And it makes me feel very confident heading towards that movie. But next is just my MVP. And I feel like people are going to feel the same way as I do. The MVP of this film is Brandon Perea as Boone, and he is the Philip Seymour Hoffman here. He is so funny, and he has so much charisma, and has all these one-liners. He's just like this basic country kind of hippie dude, and he's got this strong southern accent, and it's just perfect. Boone for the win, man, Boone. But I don't want to ramble all day. I have three more things that I loved about this movie. The first being how menacing the storms felt. I talked a little bit about the tornadoes, but when you see a disaster film like this, you want to be scared. You want it to be a thrill, and this was. There's a scene at the rodeo. If you've seen the trailers, you've probably seen this, but it was eerily similar to the drive-in movie scene with The Shining in the original movie, and the way that it all plays out is legit terrifying. Like, you get claustrophobic, you feel the pressure, and there are very real stakes. People are getting sucked up into the air and stuff. It's absolutely wild. And the second thing kind of plays on that, just how much they emphasize the victims of these storms. Oftentimes, you don't see that, and as much fun as it is watching like a town get ripped apart, there are actual people living through these situations. Like, this is actually happening out there, and there's people that have suffered gravely and who have been impacted by it. I don't know. What I'm trying to say is this film creates some sort of awareness for that, and I respected that message a lot. And then the third thing that I loved was just the final act of the film. So many times we see these movies that have so much potential that is just wasted with a third act that doesn't give a shit about anything that it works so hard to get to in the rest of the film, but this kicked ass. There's a water tower falling down and buildings being ripped apart, but we're still centered and locked in on our main characters and the character development that has been building this whole time. I love the resolve and the way that things play out. It's about as good a time at the theater as you'll see. I think you guys are gonna dig it. I really do. This movie was fantastic for me. I have one negative. Like, there was literally one gripe that I had walking out, and that is the romance. I could have used a little more romance. Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt were making out as the credits rolled in the first film, and so is it so much to ask that we get the same here? Like, there is some romantic tension in this. I just just argue that it's not enough for a big movie. But that's just me, and that is just Twisters. And my friends, as always, I do want to give my Jones Vibes star rating. I'm giving Twisters 4.5 out of 5 stars, no doubt. But go down to the comments right now, let me know all of your thoughts on this movie. If you've seen Twisters, what did you think? If you're going to see it, are you excited about it? And also, what do you think about the original film? Let me know all that, I'd greatly appreciate it. And don't forget to keep up the good vibes, my friends. Peace!